They called security on a single mom and an autistic man in a crowded mall, and within seconds, everyone was staring like they were guilty. But his reaction shocked them so completely that the people who wanted them gone suddenly had nowhere to hide. Maya woke before the sky decided on a color, the kind of dawn that made the window look like watered-down milk. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator's tired hum and the soft ticking of a discount clock that always ran a little fast, like it was anxious too. She stood in the narrow kitchen in socks with worn heels, staring at a note taped to the cabinet, a reminder about a meeting she could not miss. Her fingers hovered over the coffee tin, then pulled back, calculating what comfort cost this week and what it might cost later. In the bedroom, her son slept twisted in his blanket like he had been swimming through dreams all night. His lashes looked too long for a boy who had already learned to apologize for taking up space. Maya watched his chest rise and fall, steady and innocent, and felt that familiar moral ache. The world demanded proof she was good enough, yet it never asked that of fathers who disappeared like smoke. She smoothed his hair once, just once, because too much tenderness made her throat close, and she needed air. She moved quietly, dressing in the same jeans she wore to job interviews, the ones that tried to look confident even when she did not. A small bruise-colored stain marked the cuff of her sweater, and she considered changing, then decided not to waste the minutes. The mirror in the hallway caught her face at an angle that felt unfair, cheekbones sharp from stress, eyes always scanning for the next problem. She practiced a smile anyway, not because she believed it, but because children borrow their bravery from grown-ups. On the counter sat a folded envelope with her name written in ink that looked official. She had not opened it last night, afraid it would contain another deadline, another warning, another sentence that began politely and ended with the floor falling out. She slid the envelope into her bag without looking, telling herself she would read it when her hands stopped shaking. The lie tasted bitter, but it kept her moving. In the other room, her son murmured in his sleep, and she flinched like the sound was a fragile thing. "Buddy," she whispered, when she finally woke him, gentle as if waking him too hard would crack the morning. His eyes blinked open, searching her face the way he always did, as if checking the weather for storms. She told him it was a special day, a small treat after school, something warm and sweet at the big mall bookstore cafe. The words sounded almost like a promise of safety. He smiled, and in that smile she saw everything she could still lose. As she packed his backpack, Maya counted quietly. Diapers were gone now, but there were other things that drained a life. Field trip fees, class photos, the extra gas to reach better schools. Her brain did what it always did under pressure, scanning for danger the way a finger finds a bruise without thinking. She imagined the meeting on the note, the envelope in her bag, the way people looked at single mothers like they were half a person. She wondered if love could be measured like rent, due on the first, unforgiving when late. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting, and the parking lot glistened from last night's rain. Maya held her son's hand as they walked, her grip firm but not tight, the way you hold something precious without admitting you're afraid it will slip away. A neighbor nodded hello and then glanced at the child, at Maya, at the car. An old sedan with a door that stuck. Maya nodded back, pretending not to notice the silent math some people did with their eyes. At the school drop-off, parents stood in small clusters, laughing too loudly, trading weekend plans like they were trading proof of belonging. Maya kept her face calm as she kissed her son's forehead. He hesitated, then hugged her waist hard, the way he did when he sensed she was pretending. "After school?" he asked, and she said yes too quickly, like speed could make it true. When he finally let go, it felt like pulling a thread from cloth and hoping the whole thing wouldn't unravel. The hours dragged. Maya went through her shift with her mind half in her body and half in the future, where consequences lived. Her phone buzzed once and her heart jumped high, then sank when it was only a promotional text. She told herself she was overreacting. She told herself that all parents worried. But worry for Maya was not a cloud. It was a weight strapped to her ribs, tightening whenever she imagined a stranger deciding her son would be better off elsewhere. When the school day ended, she picked him up and forced her voice to sound light. He climbed into the back seat with a careful happiness that made Maya want to cry. They drove toward the mall, and the late afternoon sun flashed through trees like a strobe, making the world feel jumpy and unreal. Her son talked about a story they read in class, about a hero who was misunderstood, and Maya swallowed hard at the timing. She parked, took a breath, and told herself this was just coffee and books, nothing more. Inside the mall, warmth hit them like a blanket, but so did noise, music, footsteps, laughter, announcements that sounded cheerful and sharp at the same time. Maya adjusted her bag on her shoulder and guided her son through the crowd. Then she saw him near the entrance, a man standing very still, eyes unfocused, lips moving as if counting something only he could see. He rubbed 2 fingers together, over and over, like he was trying to erase a feeling from his skin, and Maya felt the air change, like the story had just quietly decided to begin. Her son noticed too and slowed, curiosity bright on his face. Maya's first instinct was protection, the reflex to steer away from anything unpredictable. But another instinct rose underneath it, something older, something tired of watching people become invisible. The man's jaw tightened as a group walked by and stared, and he blinked too fast, fighting a battle no one applauded. Maya took 1 step closer before she could talk herself out of it, and her hand tightened around her son's because she did not yet know what she was walking into. And then, as Maya opened her mouth to offer the smallest kindness, her phone vibrated again, this time with a notification that showed the first line of a message she had been dreading to read. Regarding custody review, we need to... Before we continue, what do you think that message is really about? And why would it arrive right now? Put your guess down in the comments below. Maya froze with the phone half out of her bag, as if movement might make the words real. The preview line glowed like a warning flare, then disappeared when her screen dimmed, leaving only her reflection. Wide eyes, tight mouth, the face of someone always bracing. She slid the phone back without opening it, telling herself she would not let a single sentence ruin her son's one bright hour. But the message stayed alive in her body, a quiet alarm that kept ringing even in silence. Her son leaned closer to the man, fascinated in the innocent way children can be, the way they look without adding a story on top. The man's lips kept moving in a steady rhythm, and Maya noticed how his shoulders rose a fraction each time someone passed too close, like he was flinching without flinching. He wore a plain hoodie despite the warm air, and the fabric around his wrists looked chewed by nervous hands. His gaze skipped from the polished floor to the skylights, as though he needed something constant to anchor him. Maya crouched beside her son, lowering her voice. "We give people space," she said, gentle but firm, and her son nodded even as his curiosity stayed lit. Still, she could not ignore the man's loneliness, the way he stood at the edge of everyone's comfort like an uninvited thought. She knew that posture. She had worn it in waiting rooms, job lobbies, and school offices where the chairs felt designed to remind you not to stay long. The man's fingers rubbed together again, faster now, and his breathing sounded shallow when the mall's music swelled. Maya pictured a wave building inside him, one more sound away from breaking. She also pictured what strangers did when they saw someone struggling in public. The quick tightening of faces, the hunger for control, the relief of blaming. Her own heart beat harder, not from fear of him, but from fear of what others would decide he was. She took a slow step forward, keeping her body angled sideways so she would not feel like a wall. "Hi," she said softly, the word offered like a cup of water. The man's eyes flicked to her, then away, as if looking directly at her was too bright. His lips formed numbers without sound. Maya's son, still holding her hand, whispered, "Is he doing math?" And Maya felt the tender ache of how simple the world could be before adults taught it suspicion. The man's jaw tightened at the child's voice. but not with anger. More like a startled animal hearing a branch snap. He pulled his sleeves down over his hands and shifted his weight, trying to become smaller. Maya kept her tone even. "Do you need help finding someone?" she asked. He swallowed, and for a second it looked like he might answer, like a door inside him had cracked open. A couple walked by, their conversation pausing as their eyes skimmed the scene. Single mom, child, strange man hovering. The woman's expression hardened, the kind of look that pretends to be concern but carries something colder underneath. She tugged her partner's elbow and murmured something that made him glance back twice. Maya felt her cheeks heat, the old reflex to justify herself to people who had not earned an explanation. The man's counting sped up, a whispering engine. His gaze jumped to the storefront lights, then to the floor again, as if he could not decide where safety lived. Maya noticed a faint red mark on his neck, like he'd scratched himself without noticing. He pressed his fingers to his thigh, tapping in a pattern, desperate for order. She realized he wasn't watching her son at all. He was watching the space, measuring it, trying to survive it. Maya's son shifted closer to her leg, suddenly less curious, sensing the tension he could not name. Maya stood a little taller, her shoulders squaring the way they did when someone spoke to her in that particular tone at school meetings. She wanted to leave, walk away before strangers could build a story that hurt her. Yet the man looked like he might drown right there on dry land, and she hated the part of the world that would step over him without blinking. "Buddy," she murmured to her son, "let's go pick our drink." She guided him toward the bookstore cafe, but she caught the man's eye for a brief moment and nodded, a silent message that she wasn't afraid of him. His expression didn't soften exactly. It steadied, just a little, as if her nod gave him one extra second of air. Maya didn't know why that mattered to her so much. They entered the bookstore cafe, where the scent of pastries tried to convince her that life was gentle. Soft chairs, neat displays, and people with clean coats created a quiet kind of wealth that didn't shout, it simply assumed. Maya counted her cash again without meaning to, feeling her stomach tighten as she scanned the prices. She told herself she belonged here for one small purchase, one small piece, even if her jeans and tired eyes told a different story. Her son pressed his palms to a display of colorful books, his face glowing with want. Maya smiled and promised they could look, not buy, and he accepted it with that brave little nod children do when they learn to swallow desire. Then she saw the man again just outside the cafe entrance, hovering at the edge like he was debating whether crossing that line would be punished. He didn't step in. He simply stood there, counting under his breath, while a store employee glanced up and then away too quickly. Maya turned toward the counter, ready to order the cheapest warm thing she could call a treat. But before she spoke, she noticed the employee's eyes flick to the man again, and the tightness in their smile appeared like a mask being pulled on. Across the room, the same perfume-smooth woman from earlier leaned toward the employee and whispered, her gaze sharp as a pin. The employee nodded once, and Maya felt the room's warmth drop by a degree. The employee's nod was small, but it landed in Maya's gut like a stone. The perfume-smooth woman didn't look away when Maya noticed her. She held the stare for a beat too long, then turned, as if the decision had already been made. Maya felt the old shame rise, irrational and familiar, the feeling that she needed to prove she deserved to stand under these warm lights. Her son reached for her sleeve, pointing at a cookie behind glass, and she forced her voice to stay soft. "Just one," Maya said, and the words were meant for her son, but they sounded like a plea to the room. The line behind her shifted, impatient shoes scraping polished floor. She could sense eyes measuring her, what she wore, what she ordered, how her child behaved. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and money. Maya breathed through it, telling herself she would not shrink today, not in front of her son. At the edge of her vision, the man remained near the entrance, still counting, still rubbing his fingers together. His shoulders tightened when the music changed, a brighter song that felt too loud for the space. He turned his head slightly, scanning faces as if looking for one safe expression. Maya wondered who he was waiting for. She also wondered why nobody else wondered. Her son's gaze drifted toward the man again, and Maya gently guided his attention back to the menu. "Eyes on the pictures," she whispered with a small smile, trying to keep curiosity from becoming a spotlight. The boy nodded, but his mouth twitched, as if he had a question he didn't know how to ask. Maya felt a twist of tenderness and fear. Children noticed everything, and the world taught them what to do with what they noticed. The employee at the register asked for Maya's order with a voice that sounded practiced, not unkind, but hollowed out. Maya pointed to the smallest hot chocolate and the plainest cookie, and the employee's eyes dipped to Maya's bills as if money had a smell. Maya hated how quickly her mind turned this into a lesson. The rich got comfort, the poor got watched. She handed over the cash with steady fingers that did not feel steady at all. Behind her, the perfume-smooth woman murmured again, and this time Maya caught a few words. Kid, alone, making people uncomfortable. Each phrase was soft enough to deny, sharp enough to cut. Maya turned slightly, but the woman had already pivoted toward a table, her posture relaxed like someone who had just tossed a match into dry grass. Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to confront her. She also wanted to disappear. Her son tugged her sleeve again, suddenly quieter. "Mom," he whispered, "are we in trouble?" The question was small, but it exposed everything Maya tried to hide. She crouched beside him, smoothing his jacket. "No," she said, making the word a shelter. Yet her body didn't believe her. Her body remembered school offices and stern voices, and the way people said concern when they meant judgment. Maya's phone vibrated in her bag, a soft buzz like a wasp trapped in cloth. She ignored it, but the vibration felt connected to the whispering woman, to the man at the entrance, to the invisible scoreboard she could never see but always seemed to be losing. She imagined the custody message again, unfinished, hanging like a hook inside her. Regarding custody review, we need to... Need to what? Need to prove what? Need to take what? The employee placed the hot chocolate on the counter with a careful smile and slid the cookie beside it. Maya thanked them too quickly, like gratitude could buy safety. She guided her son toward an open table near a bookshelf display, choosing a spot where she could see the entrance and still pretend they were just another family enjoying a treat. Her son took a cautious sip, then smiled despite himself, chocolate on his upper lip like a small victory. Maya's eyes drifted back to the entrance again. The man's counting had slowed, but his hand still moved in that rubbing motion, as if his skin didn't fit right. A different employee, older, with a stiff posture, stepped near him and said something Maya couldn't hear. The man's head jerked, not toward the employee, but away, like words had physical force. Maya felt her fingers curl around her cup. The older employee glanced around, then looked directly at Maya's table, too direct to be casual. Maya's stomach dropped. The employee's gaze flicked to Maya's son, then back to the man, and the meaning formed without being spoken. They were being grouped together. Maya's cheeks burned, half anger, half dread. She couldn't tell which emotion was more dangerous to show. The perfume-smooth woman stood and walked past Maya's table, slowly, as if she had every right to inspect. She smiled at Maya's son in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "Cute," she said, then let her gaze slide to Maya's worn sweater, the stain at the cuff, the cheap cup in her hand. Maya waited for the woman to keep walking. Instead, the woman paused and looked toward the counter, raising her chin slightly like a signal. A minute later, 2 men in dark uniforms appeared at the edge of the cafe, moving with the quiet confidence of people who expect obedience. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply arrived, and the room's air rearranged itself around them. One of them spoke to the older employee, then turned, scanning the space, eyes landing on Maya's table and on the man at the entrance as if they were items on a list. The man at the entrance stiffened, his hands stopping for half a second before resuming faster than before. Maya's son sat up straighter, the chocolate forgotten. Maya felt her pulse in her ears, loud enough to drown out the soft music. The guard took a step closer, And in that moment, Maya understood the danger wasn't loud or violent. It was polite. It was official. It was about to decide who belonged. One guard stopped near Maya's table first, close enough that his shadow touched her cup. He wore a neutral expression that could be mistaken for professionalism, but his eyes moved in quick checks, her hands, her bag, her son's face. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice low, "we need you to come with us for a moment." The word need wasn't loud, yet it carried the weight of a door locking. Maya's mouth opened, but only air came out at first. Her son's fingers tightened around the cookie, crushing the edge. "Why?" he asked, and the guard's gaze slid to him with a look that pretended to be kind. "Just a quick conversation," the guard said, "the way people speak when they want you to stop asking." Maya felt heat rise in her neck. She had done nothing. She had paid. She had spoken softly, yet the room watched as if she were the problem they had been waiting for. The second guard approached the man at the entrance. The man's shoulders pulled up toward his ears as if bracing for impact. His lips moved faster, counting without pause, and he pressed his fingertips hard into his palms, leaving faint crescent marks. The guard said something Maya couldn't hear, and the man shook his head once, small and sharp. It wasn't defiance. It was survival. But the guard's posture stiffened as if he had been challenged. Maya stood slowly, careful not to spill the hot chocolate, because small accidents could become proof in the wrong hands. "What is this about?" she asked, keeping her voice steady for her son. The guard didn't answer directly, and that was the first cruelty, refusing her the dignity of specifics. "We've had a concern," he said, vague as fog. Concern could mean anything. Concern could mean someone didn't like the look of her. Concern could mean they had already chosen a story and only needed her to play her part. Around them, conversation softened, then stopped. Chairs shifted. A phone screen lit up at a nearby table, angled toward the scene. Maya's stomach turned. The world loved a spectacle, especially when it could pretend it was for safety. She looked at her son and saw fear trying to behave. The boy's chin trembled once, then he swallowed it down, like he had practiced. "Can my son stay here?" Maya asked, already hating herself for bargaining. The guard's face tightened. "He can come," he said, and the word "can" sounded like permission he didn't deserve to grant. Maya's mind flashed to that unfinished custody message again, to the idea of someone writing notes about her. She imagined a report. Mother was uncooperative. Mother caused a scene. She felt trapped between defending herself and appearing unstable. The guards guided them toward the corridor outside the cafe, not touching, but close enough that their presence pressed against Maya's back. Her son walked beside her, silent, eyes wide. The man at the entrance moved too, hesitant and jerky, like his feet didn't trust the floor. Maya noticed he kept turning his head slightly, as if trying to find an exit sign that meant more than directions. Every few steps he whispered another number, the sound thin and desperate. They passed a storefront window where Maya caught their reflection. A single mother, a small boy, and a man whose hands couldn't stop moving, bracketed by uniformed authority. The image looked guilty, even when it wasn't. Maya felt rage flare, then fear smother it. She remembered how easily people believed what uniforms suggested. She remembered being talked over in offices with fluorescent lights, where every emotion became evidence against her. In the corridor, the guards paused near a blank wall, away from the warmth of the cafe. The air felt colder there, like the mall had a hidden weather system for people being corrected. The first guard spoke again, still low. "We're going to ask you to leave the premises today," he said. Leave. Not because she'd broken a rule, but because someone had asked for her removal, and the request had been granted. Maya's voice finally found its edge. "On what grounds?" she asked, and her own courage surprised her. The guard's eyes flicked to her son, then back to Maya, as if the child was leverage. "We received reports," he said, still foggy, still safe from accountability. Reports could be anything. Reports could be a woman's whisper turned into a verdict. Maya's hands clenched, then forced themselves open. Behind them, the man made a sound, half breath, half plea, and pressed his palms to his ears. His counting stumbled, then restarted, faster, uneven, like the rhythm had been kicked. The second guard stepped closer, saying something sharper now, and the man flinched hard. Maya saw it clearly. The man wasn't escalating. He was falling apart. But to eyes trained only in control, panic looked like threat. Maya turned her body slightly toward the man without stepping closer. An instinctive shield. "He's not doing anything," she said. And the guard's jaw tightened, as if her compassion itself was inconvenient. Her son reached for her hand, his grip sweaty and strong. Maya felt a terrible moral question open inside her. Protect her child by staying quiet, or protect a stranger by speaking up and risking the label of difficult. The second guard's hand hovered near his radio. The man's breathing turned choppy, his gaze darting, and his fingers began tapping his thigh in a frantic pattern. A few shoppers slowed to watch, their faces hungry with certainty. Maya imagined the custody office hearing about this, imagined a screenshot, a caption, a version of her that wasn't her. The first guard spoke again, and this time his politeness thinned. "Ma'am, you need to cooperate." The man suddenly took a small step forward, not toward the guards, but toward Maya and her son, as if drawn by the simplest human logic. The smaller ones should be protected. His hands rose, palms outward, trembling in the air like fragile flags. The second guard stiffened, reading the movement wrong. Maya's heart slammed. The man's lips formed words that seemed to fight their way out, and the first sound of his voice landed in the silence like a match about to touch paper. The man's voice came out rough, like it had been locked away for emergencies and forced open. "She didn't do anything," he said, careful with every syllable, as if words could snap under pressure. He didn't square up or puff out his chest. He simply angled himself between Maya's son and the guards, a quiet shield made of trembling resolve. The corridor felt narrower, the air suddenly too thin, and Maya sensed the whole mall listening for what kind of scene this would become. The second guard stiffened, reading the movement as a challenge instead of a plea. "Sir, step back," he said, a command wrapped in fake calm. The man flinched at the sound, shoulders rising toward his ears. But he didn't flee. He shifted his feet the way someone shifts on hot pavement, trying to obey without abandoning what felt right. His hands floated up, palms open, fingers spread, an instinctive sign that he meant no harm. Maya's son stared at the man with wide, unmoving eyes, fear and fascination tangled together. The boy's cookie crumbled in his fist, forgotten, and his breathing turned quick and shallow. Maya felt a sharp guilt, the kind that doesn't ask permission. She had brought him here for comfort, and now comfort had cracked. She lowered herself slightly, whispering close to her son's ear, "Stay with me," even though her own voice didn't sound fully convinced. The man swallowed and spoke again, softer, as if volume could trigger something worse. "Please don't scare the kid," he said, and the sentence landed like a mirror in the guard's hands. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't an argument. It was a moral question disguised as a request, forcing everyone to see the child's small face and what this moment might carve into him. For a heartbeat, even the first guard's expression flickered, something close to uncertainty, quickly masked. Maya noticed it because she lived on microsignals, the tiny shifts that decided whether a person would be gentle or cruel. Her phone buzzed deep in her bag again, and she felt it like a warning tremor. Custody review, reports, notes. The world loved paperwork when it wanted to erase humanity. Then the man's right hand drifted toward his pocket, slow and deliberate, like he was moving through thick water. The guards tensed instantly. Maya could see it in their shoulders, the sudden readiness in their stance. Her stomach dropped. She imagined the worst version of this moment, the kind strangers replay later with certainty and judgment. The man paused mid-motion, realizing too late how his body language might be read by frightened people. "Stop!" the second guard snapped, and the word cracked across the corridor. The man froze, breath trapped, fingers hovering near the pocket seam. His lips began counting again, fast and uneven, like numbers were the only safe floor under him. Sweat gathered near his hairline, and his eyes darted without landing, trying to find a face that wouldn't turn him into a threat. The first guard raised a hand, palm out, a gesture meant to calm, but also to control. "Show me your hands," he said. Maya's chest tightened with anger at how quickly fear became authority. She wanted to say, "He's not dangerous, he's terrified," but she knew how that sounded to people who trusted uniforms more than women in worn sweaters. So she held her son's hand harder and watched, praying the man would choose the one move that wouldn't destroy him. The man inhaled in a shaky line and moved again, even slower, like he had learned the rules of this room too late. He pulled out a small card, edges frayed and softened from overuse, and held it up between trembling fingers. He didn't thrust it forward. He offered it into the space like an apology made of paper. Maya couldn't read it from where she stood, but she felt the air shift the moment the card appeared. The guards leaned in enough to see without grabbing him. The first guard took the card carefully and glanced down, and his face changed in a way Maya couldn't name at first. Not relief, not anger, confusion, like someone realizing they'd been following the wrong map. The second guard leaned closer, jaw unclenching a fraction, eyes scanning the print as if it didn't match the story he'd already decided on. The man's hands trembled at his sides, still raised slightly, waiting for permission to exist. His counting continued, but it slowed in small increments, like a storm losing strength. Maya noticed his fingertips were red, rubbed raw, and the sight made her throat tighten with a strange tenderness. This wasn't rebellion. This was a person trying to stay intact, while strangers judged him for the way his nervous system begged for order. The man's hand returned to his pocket, and Maya's breath caught again. He moved with exaggerated care, eyes lowered, body rigid with the effort of being acceptable. He pulled out a folded letter, creased and softened like it had been opened during other public emergencies. For a second he pressed it to his chest, eyes squeezed shut, as if the paper held his last remaining dignity. Somewhere behind them, a phone camera clicked on, and Maya turned her head to see a teenager filming from a distance, mouth slightly open with excitement. Shame flared through Maya, not for the man, not for herself, but for the audience that fed on humiliation like entertainment. She imagined this clip online, stripped of context, the comments full of certainty from people who had never been trapped in someone else's misunderstanding. The first guard looked up from the card to the man's face, then to Maya and her son, then back again, linking pieces that didn't fit the accusation. His mouth opened. "This says," he began, but the sentence trailed off, unfinished, swallowed by the dawning awareness that the problem might not be the people standing in front of him at all. Maya watched his eyes flick to the folded letter, and she felt the corridor tilt with a new question. What would happen if that letter was finally read out loud? The first guard cleared his throat, still staring at the card as if the words kept rearranging themselves. His voice lost its edge. "This is an autism information card," he said, and the corridor seemed to exhale in a confused hush. The second guard's eyes narrowed, not with suspicion now, but with the discomfort of being wrong in public. Maya felt her shoulders loosen a fraction, then tense again, because being right didn't always protect you. Sometimes it only made people angry. The man nodded too quickly, like he'd been waiting for someone to say the truth out loud. His lips kept moving, counting under his breath, but his gaze flicked to the folded letter as if it held the rest of him. He made a sound that wasn't quite a word. The first guard looked at the letter and hesitated, suddenly aware that paper could carry more weight than a uniform. "What is that?" the guard asked, and the man's fingers tightened around the fold. It explains, the man managed, voice thin. He tapped the letter once against his chest, then held it out with both hands, arms shaking as if offering something precious. Maya saw his knuckles whiten. She realized he had prepared for moments like this, rehearsed them, lived them, survived them. Enough times to carry a letter like a life jacket. A bitter thought flashed through her. How many times had he needed saving from people's concern? The first guard took the letter, slower than before, and unfolded it carefully. The paper crackled in the quiet, a small sound that felt too loud. He began to read, eyes moving left to right, then stopping, then starting again. Maya watched the guard's face change line by line, his brows lifting, his jaw relaxing, the shame of realization creeping in. The second guard leaned in, reading over his shoulder, and his lips pressed together hard. Maya couldn't see the words, but she could imagine them. The careful explanations, the request for patience, the plea not to mistake panic for threat. She pictured the man writing it at a kitchen table, trying to translate his inner world into sentences strangers might respect. She pictured him folding it again and again, practicing the moment he'd have to prove he was human. The thought made Maya's eyes burn. Her son watched the guards reading, confused, his small face searching for the rules. Maya pulled him closer, her hand firm on his shoulder, grounding him with touch. "He's okay," she whispered, though the whisper was also for herself. The boy nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the man, as if sensing something important was being decided about what kindness looked like. Maya wondered what he would remember later, the fear or the courage. The first guard lowered the letter halfway and looked at the man with a different kind of caution. Less control, more respect. "It says loud spaces can cause overload," he read aloud, stumbling slightly over the word as if it belonged to a language he didn't speak. The man flinched at being explained publicly, cheeks flushing, eyes darting away. Maya felt a protective anger rise. Even understanding could humiliate if it was delivered like a label. A small crowd had gathered at a distance, pretending to browse while listening. Maya noticed a woman with a shopping bag watching with bright curiosity, then whispering to her friend. Another person raised a phone, then lowered it when the tension shifted away from spectacle and toward discomfort. The air filled with that particular silence people wear when they realize they've been part of something ugly. Maya hated how quickly attention changed once it stopped being entertaining. The second guard cleared his throat, the sound sharp with embarrassment. "So why were you hovering around families?" he asked the man, and Maya felt her stomach twist again. Even now, the question carried accusation, as if the man needed a reason to stand in public. The man's counting sped up for a beat, then slowed. He pointed toward the hallway beyond the cafe, words struggling. "Waiting," he said, "for my sister. She works here." Maya's mind snagged on the phrase as if it were a hook. Sister. Works here. She thought of the unfinished custody message again, the meeting note on her cabinet, the sense that invisible systems were always deciding her fate. She imagined a corporate complaint filed against her, a safety incident logged with her description. The idea made her mouth go dry. If someone reported her today, could it be used against her later, even if she'd done nothing? The first guard glanced at Maya now, as if noticing she had a story too. "Ma'am, we received a complaint," he said, and the word complaint hit Maya like a cold splash. Complaint meant someone had power to define reality. She looked past him and saw at the edge of the crowd the perfume-smooth woman standing with her arms folded, calm as if she were watching a problem get cleaned up. The woman's expression said she expected gratitude. Maya's son leaned into her side, and Maya felt the instinct to retreat, to leave before anything could be written down. But the man stood there shaking, letter gone from his hands, dignity stripped and examined. Maya recognized that posture too, the posture of being evaluated. Her anger sharpened into clarity. She realized if she walked away now, She would be teaching her son that the safest choice was silence, and silence, she knew, had a cost. The man whispered something that sounded like an apology, even though he hadn't done anything. "Sorry," he said, eyes down, shoulders tight, as if he carried the blame automatically. Maya hated the word in his mouth. She took a small step forward, not toward the guards, but toward the truth. Her voice came out steady, surprising even her. "Who complained?" she asked. "And what exactly did they say?" The first guard hesitated, eyes shifting toward the crowd and then away, as if the answer was suddenly inconvenient. The second guard's hand hovered near his radio again, not to escalate, but to end the conversation before it became official in the wrong direction. The perfume-smooth woman's chin lifted, almost imperceptibly, like she was ready to insist. Maya felt the moment tightening, not into violence, but into a quiet battle over whose version of events would be recorded. Maya's question hung in the air, simple and sharp. The first guard's eyes slid toward the crowd again, then back to her, as if he wished he could answer without naming anyone. "A customer reported feeling unsafe," he said, vague on purpose. The phrase sounded clean, almost reasonable, yet it erased the real scene. A man counting to stay steady, a mother buying the cheapest comfort she could afford. Maya felt the sting of it in her teeth because she knew how often unsafe really meant unfamiliar. The perfume-smooth woman shifted her weight, satisfied, like she had pressed a button and watched the machine work. Maya watched her face, searching for hesitation, for conscience, and found none. The woman's gaze flicked to Maya's sweater cuff, then to her son, then away, as if poverty and difference were smudges to be wiped. Maya's heart pounded with a steady, furious rhythm. She thought of the custody message in her bag, unfinished but heavy, and realized how easily a stranger's complaint could become evidence. The man, Eli, stood with his hands hovering near his chest, as if unsure where to put them without being misunderstood. His counting slowed, then restarted when someone laughed nearby. The sound made him blink hard, like light in his eyes. He whispered, "My sister," as if saying it could summon safety. Maya believed him, but belief wasn't what the world asked for. It asked for documentation, performance, perfect calm under pressure. She saw the paradox in his face. To be believed, he had to appear unaffected by being doubted. Maya bent toward her son and brushed chocolate from his lip with her thumb, a small act of normalcy. The boy watched the adults with a seriousness that made him look older than he was. "Mom, did we do something bad?" he whispered. Maya swallowed, tasting metal. "No," she said firmly, then added, "Sometimes grown-ups get scared of the wrong things." The words came out before she could soften them, and she wondered if she had just planted a seed of distrust, or a seed of discernment. The second guard cleared his throat, impatience hiding behind procedure. "We can just have you all leave and be done," he said, as if removal was a neat solution instead of a wound. Maya imagined walking out, shoulders hunched, eyes down, while the perfume-smooth woman returned to her table feeling righteous. She imagined her son learning that dignity was negotiable. She imagined Eli walking away with his letter back in his pocket, preparing it for the next time. The thought made Maya's chest tighten with shame she refused to accept. "I'd like to speak to a manager," Maya said, keeping her voice level. The first guard's brows lifted slightly, surprised she'd ask for anything. The crowd's attention sharpened. People loved a second act. The perfume-smooth woman's lips pressed together, a hint of annoyance. Eli's eyes darted to Maya, then down again, as if he didn't understand why she would risk more scrutiny on his behalf. Maya didn't fully understand either. She only knew she couldn't leave this story in someone else's hands. The first guard stepped aside to radio quietly, his voice low enough to seem respectful, but not low enough to hide. Maya caught fragments. Misunderstanding, autism card, customer complaint. Each phrase sounded like a file label. Eli rocked subtly on his heels, the motion small but constant, and Maya recognized the brain's attempt to regulate itself when stress flooded the body. Her own regulation was different. Stillness, politeness, swallowing the scream. Both were survival. Both were judged. A manager arrived from the cafe area, a woman with perfect hair and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked, already glancing at Eli's hands like they were the issue themselves. The guard handed her the card and the letter, and the manager's smile tightened further, as if compassion was an expense. Maya watched her expression for empathy and found only calculation. The manager's gaze swept over Maya and landed briefly on her son, lingering there like a threat disguised as concern. The manager spoke in a soft, rehearsed tone. "We want everyone to feel comfortable," she said, and Maya heard the unspoken addition, "especially the customers who look like they belong." Eli flinched at the word comfortable, as if it implied his existence was discomfort. He whispered numbers faster, and Maya saw his jaw tremble with the effort to stay quiet. The manager turned slightly, angling her body to block Eli from the crowd's view, like he was an embarrassing display to be hidden. Maya's phone buzzed again, insistent now, and she felt the vibration echo in her ribs. She pictured the message opening itself, turning into a chain of consequences, meetings, reports, someone deciding her home wasn't stable enough. The manager's eyes flicked to Maya's bag as if she noticed the sound, and for a split second Maya felt exposed, like every private fear had become visible. She straightened her spine anyway. "My son is not a prop for your comfort," she said, calm but edged. The manager's smile faltered. The perfume-smooth woman chose that moment to step forward, voice sweet as frosting. "I just thought it was suspicious," she said, gesturing vaguely at Eli. He was hovering, and she was talking to him with her child right there. Her words fell into the corridor like dirty snow, covering everything. Maya felt rage flare, but she kept her face controlled because she knew how quickly anger became a weapon against her. She glanced at Eli and saw his shoulders curl inward, as if the accusation physically pushed him smaller. Eli's breathing hitched, then steadied, then hitched again. He tried to speak, but the words jammed behind his teeth. His fingers rubbed together until the skin looked raw, and his eyes darted toward the exit, a trapped animal calculation. Maya sensed the moment tipping, not into violence but into collapse, the kind that would be filmed and labeled and misunderstood. She reached her hand out slightly, not touching him, just offering a steady point in space. "Eli," she said softly, using his name even though she'd only heard it once, and his eyes flicked to her. The manager looked uncomfortable now, not with the injustice, but with the public attention. "We can resolve this quietly," she said, and Maya heard the real meaning. Keep it off record, keep it off phones, keep it off paper. Maya's stomach turned. Quiet resolutions protected corporations, not people. She thought of her custody review again, how silence could be twisted into consent. "No," she said, still calm. "We resolve it correctly." The corridor grew still, waiting to see who would be forced to bend. At that exact moment, a woman's voice called from down the hall, sharp with urgency and recognition. "Eli," it said, and Eli's entire body jerked like he'd been yanked back from an edge. The crowd parted slightly, and a woman in a staff badge hurried toward them, eyes blazing with fear and fury. She took one look at Eli's shaking hands, one look at the guards, and her face hardened into something protective. "What did you do to him?" she demanded, and the manager's smile finally cracked. The woman who called Eli's name moved fast, weaving through the half-circle of onlookers as if their curiosity was furniture she had the right to shove aside. Her badge swung against her chest with each step, and her hands were already shaking, not from fear, but from contained rage. She reached Eli and placed herself at his side without asking, close enough that he could anchor to her presence. Eli's counting didn't stop, but it softened, the way a storm quiets when it finds land. "What did you do to him?" she repeated, voice firm, eyes locked on the guards and the manager. The manager's smile tried to return, brittle and glossy. "Ma'am, we were responding to a concern," she said, as if the word concern could bleach everything clean. Eli's sister, Jordan, cut her off with a look that could slice. "A concern about what?" she asked. "His hands? His silence? The fact that he exists in public?" Jordan reached for the letter the guard still held, and the guard hesitated before handing it over. She scanned it quickly, jaw tightening as she read her brother's words like she'd read them 100 times in her head. "He carries this because people keep doing this," she said, lifting the paper slightly so the manager could see it too. Her voice cracked on the last word, not from weakness, but from exhaustion. Maya felt a sudden kinship with that sound. It was the sound of living on trial. Maya's son stared at Jordan with open admiration, as if her anger made sense in a world that had stopped making sense. Maya pulled him closer, aware that the crowd was still watching, still hungry for a clean ending. Jordan turned her attention to Maya and softened just a fraction. "Are you okay?" she asked. Maya nodded, but the motion felt untrue. Her throat burned with all the things she hadn't said yet. About the complaint, about the custody message, about how easily a mother could be painted as unfit. The second guard tried to reclaim control with procedure. "We just need everyone to leave," he insisted. Jordan's eyes flashed. "No," she said, and the single syllable carried years of practice. "You need to document this." The manager's posture stiffened, and Maya saw the corporate instinct rise, minimize, smooth over, erase. Jordan didn't let her. "Get your incident report," she demanded, "and get the name of the complainant, because my brother isn't your liability. Your ignorance is." Eli's breathing hitched at the word name. His shoulders curled inward, as if the idea of being discussed officially made his skin crawl. Jordan noticed and lowered her tone, leaning toward him. "You're safe," she murmured, a steady rhythm. Eli nodded once, eyes fixed on a point on the floor. Maya watched how Jordan regulated him. Calm voice, predictable phrases, physical closeness without force. It was love translated into structure. Maya felt her own nervous system respond, heart slowing just enough to think. The perfume-smooth woman shifted backward, sensing the mood change. She raised her chin again, ready to defend herself with righteousness. "I was just trying to protect children," she said, voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. Maya felt something inside her snap into clarity. "My child was not in danger," Maya said, controlled and quiet, which somehow made it louder. "He was learning what cruelty looks like." The woman's eyes narrowed, offended at being named. A few people in the crowd looked away, suddenly fascinated by store windows. Others leaned in, drawn to the discomfort like heat. Jordan's gaze pinned the perfume-smooth woman. "You saw a man struggling and decided it was suspicious," she said. "That says more about you than him." The woman opened her mouth, then shut it, then glanced toward the manager as if expecting backup. The manager's face tightened, caught between protecting a paying customer and avoiding a public relations nightmare. Maya's phone buzzed again, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. She pulled it out, screen trembling in her hand. The message was longer now, no longer a preview. Her eyes caught phrases that punched through her chest. Custody review. Home stability. Recommended compliance. The words blurred. Maya felt the room tilt. Jordan noticed immediately, her gaze flicking to the phone, and then back to Maya's face. "What is that?" Jordan asked, not prying, just steady. Maya swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "They're reviewing my custody," she said, the sentence tasting like ash. Saying it out loud made it real. The manager's eyes sharpened at the word custody, and Maya hated her for that reflex. Like motherhood was a file, like love was a case. The perfume-smooth woman's expression shifted too, a tiny spark of satisfaction, as if a complaint could become a lever. Maya realized with a cold clarity that this wasn't just embarrassment. This could follow her. Jordan's face changed, anger narrowing into focus. "They contacted you today?" she asked. Maya nodded. Jordan looked at the guards. "Then you understand why your quiet resolution is not acceptable," she said, voice cutting. "Because when a mother has a custody review, a mall incident becomes a story, and a story becomes a weapon." The guard looked unsettled, like he'd never considered how systems stacked. Maya felt tears threaten, not from weakness, but from the brutal precision of Jordan's words. Eli lifted his head slightly at the sound of Jordan's voice protecting someone else. His eyes landed on Maya's son for a brief moment, then on Maya, and something softened in his face. Recognition, maybe. Maya saw it. He understood what it meant to be one misunderstanding away from losing everything. The crowd was quieter now, less entertained, more implicated. The teenager filming lowered the phone, uncertain. That uncertainty felt like a crack where truth might enter. The manager tried again, voice syrupy. "We can offer you a gift card for the inconvenience," she said, as if money could cover humiliation. Jordan's laugh was short and bitter. "A gift card," she repeated, incredulous. "So you can buy silence." Maya's stomach churned. The offer sounded tempting for a split second, because Maya needed every dollar. But she hated herself for even thinking it. She looked at her son and knew what accepting would teach him. That dignity had a price tag. Jordan turned to Maya, lowering her voice. "If they're reviewing custody, you need a record that you were targeted, not that you caused trouble," she said. Maya's heart pounded with fear and relief at the same time. A record could save her. A record could also expose her. The manager's eyes flicked between them, sensing the shift from emotional confrontation to documentation. "We don't need to escalate," the manager warned. Jordan stepped closer, calm now, dangerous in her calm. "It's already escalated," she said. "You just didn't think it would reach you." At the edge of the corridor, a man in a suit approached with a practiced smile, the mall's public relations director, drawn by reports of a scene. He glanced at the crowd, the guards, the phones, then at Maya's child, calculating risk. "Let's step somewhere private," he suggested, voice smooth as glass. Maya felt a chill. Private meant unrecorded. Private meant controlled. Jordan's eyes narrowed, and Eli's counting surged again, as if his body sensed a trap. Maya tightened her grip on her son's hand, realizing the next room might decide everything. Maya looked at the man in the suit and felt her body try to do what it had been trained to do her whole life: cooperate, soften, apologize, make the tension go away. A private room meant fewer eyes, fewer phones, fewer strangers turning pain into entertainment. It also meant no witnesses, no shared reality, no way to prove what happened if someone later decided to rewrite it in clean corporate language. The suit's smile stayed polished, but his gaze kept flicking to Maya's son, then to Jordan, then to the crowd, like he was counting risks the way Eli counted numbers. Maya's throat tightened as she imagined a door closing behind them, and the story becoming theirs to lose. Jordan didn't let the silence turn into surrender. "No private room," she said, calm and sharp, each word landing like a boundary drawn in ink. "We stay right here, where everyone can see how this ends." The suit's smile twitched at the edge, and the manager's eyes darted like she was searching for an exit that wouldn't look like guilt. The crowd leaned in again, drawn by the friction between corporate smoothness and a woman who refused to be handled. Beside Jordan, Eli's shoulders trembled as his lips moved in a steady count, and Maya realized his counting wasn't noise. It was a rope he held so he wouldn't fall. "We want to make this comfortable for everyone," the suit said, voice gentle enough to sound reasonable. Maya nearly laughed at the word comfortable, because it always seemed to mean comfortable for the people who never had to prove they belonged. The manager nodded too quickly, grateful to pass the problem upward, and Maya saw that corporate look flicker between them, contain it, minimize it, erase it. In that moment, Maya understood the real danger wasn't the guards or the crowd. It was the quiet machinery that could turn a living moment into a sanitized report that made the wrong people look responsible. Maya's phone vibrated again, and she forced herself to open the message fully, even though fear begged her to look away. The words were colder than she expected. Confirmation of a custody review meeting, a request for documentation of home stability, and a line that made her stomach drop. Community feedback has been noted. Community feedback. The phrase felt like a trap door because it could mean a neighbor's judgment, a teacher's concern, a stranger's complaint, any small thing sharpened into a reason. Her hands shook as she read, and she hated that the system could make her feel guilty without proving anything. She looked down at her son and saw him watching the adults like he was trying to learn a language he didn't want to speak. His small fingers clung to her sleeve, and his eyes kept flicking to the guards like they might suddenly decide something final. "Mom," he whispered, "are they mad at you?" Maya crouched, forcing calm into her face even as adrenaline burned behind her ribs. "They're confused," she said. And then, because she couldn't lie, she added, "Sometimes people try to fix confusion by pushing others away." She watched the sentence land in him, and it broke her heart how quickly children understand unfairness. Jordan stepped closer to the suit, not aggressive, just unmovable. "We need the incident report," she said, "and the exact reason you tried to remove my brother." The suit's patience tightened into something thinner. "We can't share personal information," he replied, rehearsed and smooth. Jordan tilted her head, eyes steady. "Then quote policy," she said. "What rule did Eli break? Say it out loud." The suit's mouth opened, then closed, because policy was suddenly inconvenient when it demanded clarity instead of control. The first guard shifted his weight, uncomfortable in a way Maya recognized, the discomfort of someone realizing they followed a feeling instead of a fact. "There was a complaint," he said again, softer, like repeating it might rebuild the certainty he'd lost. Maya turned to him, voice quiet but firm, careful not to sound emotional in the way people punish. "A complaint isn't evidence," she said. "It's someone else's discomfort, and discomfort doesn't get to decide who is removed." The guard's face tightened, and for a flicker of a second Maya saw shame. Then he hid it behind professionalism. The perfume-smooth woman stepped forward as if she couldn't stand the story slipping from her grip. "I felt unsafe," she insisted, louder now, her voice coated in righteous sweetness. "He was hovering around families, and she approached him with her child right there." Her words were clean, simple, easy for strangers to repeat. Maya felt cold fury spread through her chest because she recognized the moral shortcut. Instead of admitting fear of difference, the woman declared danger. It was easier to label than to understand, and the label came with power. Jordan turned toward the woman, her calm sharper than yelling. "You felt unsafe because you saw a person regulating," she said, counting, rubbing his fingers, avoiding eye contact. "That's not a threat. That's his nervous system trying not to drown." The woman's face hardened. "Don't lecture me," she snapped, as if being corrected was an insult. Jordan didn't blink. "I'm not lecturing," she said. "I'm naming what you did so you can't hide behind concern." The crowd murmured, shifting, some people suddenly uncomfortable with their own earlier stares. Maya's chest tightened with a different kind of fear. Not the guards now, but the phones and the way the internet loved a half-story. If her custody review ever saw the words "incident at mall," would anyone bother to read the context, or would they stop at the headline version of her life? The suit seemed to sense that fear like a scent in the air. He leaned in slightly, voice lowered as if offering protection. "We can ensure this doesn't go any further," he said. Maya understood the trade hiding inside the kindness. Silence in exchange for relief, relief in exchange for truth. A quiet payoff that would protect them all and leave her alone to carry the consequences. For a split second, Maya's brain reached for the offer the way a drowning person reaches for a floating board. It wasn't greed. It was survival. The desperate urge to make the threat stop. She imagined leaving with her son, escaping the stairs, avoiding the risk of a report that could be twisted later. Then she pictured her son years from now, remembering the day his mother accepted silence as safety. She pictured Eli folding his letter tighter, preparing it for the next stranger who would mistake his pain for danger. Maya felt a wave of shame rise. Then she realized it wasn't hers to hold. It belonged to a world that demanded quiet from the vulnerable, so the comfortable could keep their illusions. Eli made a strained sound, a breath that fought its way into words. "Please," he said, not to the guards, but to the air, to the moment, to whatever human part might still be reachable. He looked toward Maya's son and swallowed hard. He shouldn't learn that people like me get removed. The sentence broke, but it landed like a bell. The corridor went quieter, and even the suit's smile faltered, because you couldn't negotiate with that truth without looking monstrous. Maya watched her son's eyes widen, and she knew this was the kind of lesson that stayed. Jordan's hand settled lightly on Eli's shoulder, grounding him. "You're doing great," she murmured, voice steady as a metronome, and Eli's counting slowed by a fraction. Maya felt tears threaten. Not sentimental tears, but the kind that come when you witness dignity fighting to exist. The suit cleared his throat, recalibrating his strategy. "We can offer an apology," he said, "and a written statement that no wrongdoing occurred." Maya's pulse jumped at the word written. Paper mattered in custody offices. Written was something she could bring into that meeting and refuse to be dismissed. Jordan didn't soften. "Not just no wrongdoing," she said. "You need to acknowledge a disability-related misunderstanding and the way your staff escalated it." The suit's eyes tightened. "That's complicated," he replied, as if truth was a technicality. Jordan's laugh was short and bitter. "It's not complicated," she said. "It's inconvenient." The manager shifted, and Maya noticed her slipping a step back, as if she wanted distance from accountability before it attached to her name. The first guard spoke quietly, almost as if he couldn't believe himself. "We shouldn't have approached like that," he admitted. The second guard's jaw clenched, but he didn't disagree. The crowd reacted in a subtle wave, some relief, some surprise, some guilt leaking out through stiff faces. Maya felt the moment turning from accusation to accountability, and that shift felt dangerous in a new way, because it meant the corporation might try harder to control the narrative. As the suit reached for a tablet to begin documenting, Maya saw the manager glance down at her own phone, typing quickly, eyes darting, sending a message up the chain to someone who would decide how this story would be framed. The manager's thumbs moved fast on her phone, and Maya felt the shift before anyone said a word. Corporate panic had a particular texture, smooth on the surface, sharp underneath, like a smile that never reached the eyes. The suit kept tapping on his tablet, building a record, but Maya could almost sense a second record being built somewhere else, the one that would protect the mall by shaving off the truth. Jordan saw it too. Her gaze flicked to the manager's screen and then back to Maya, a silent warning that said, "Don't let them rewrite you while you're standing here." Maya's stomach tightened as she imagined an email later that began with, "For clarity," and ended with her life being reduced to a tidy paragraph. A second manager arrived, older and more confident, with the posture of someone who believed authority was the same thing as correctness. He didn't greet Maya first. He greeted the suit. His eyes swept over Eli's hands and Maya's worn sweater, then settled on Maya's son for a beat too long, as if the child was the only part of this he considered valuable. "We're going to resolve this quickly," he said. And quickly was the word people used when they didn't want accountability to take root. Maya felt her son press closer, like his body understood the danger adults denied, the danger of being decided upon. The older manager's voice stayed polite, but it carried the invisible message, the one Maya had heard in school offices and job interviews. Be easy, Be grateful, be quiet. Jordan stepped forward, calm and unshakable, as if she had done this too many times to waste energy on panic. Before you resolve anything, you need to hear what happened, she said. The older manager's expression tightened into practiced impatience. We've been informed, he replied, already pretending the story had been delivered cleanly and completely. Maya felt anger rise, not explosive, but focused. The kind that comes when you recognize a familiar pattern, a system deciding your meaning without asking your name. She thought of her custody message again and felt the cold fear of how easily a phrase like incident at the mall could become a stain that never washed out. Maya lifted her chin and spoke carefully, as if each word had to survive in court. Your staff tried to remove me and my child because a stranger felt uncomfortable, she said. And they tried to remove him because his body doesn't look normal when he's overwhelmed. Saying child out loud changed the crowd's faces. People could dismiss a woman as dramatic, but a child forced them to imagine their own. The older manager's eyes narrowed, recalculating the risk of looking heartless in public. We prioritize safety, he offered, and Maya heard the emptiness of it, the way safety became a blanket word you could pull over any injustice until it stopped moving. The perfume-smooth woman stepped forward, voice sweet and wounded, as if she were the one being attacked. I didn't want to cause drama, she said, like drama had drifted in on its own. Maya turned to her and felt something surprising, clarity instead of fear. You didn't want drama, Maya said softly. You wanted obedience. The woman blinked, offended by being seen. Maya continued, steady as a metronome. You wanted me to move away. You wanted him to disappear. And you wanted to feel noble while doing it. The words landed, and the air thickened with discomfort. Even the people who had been watching for entertainment now looked like they'd bitten something bitter. Eli's breathing hitched, and his counting sped up, the numbers tumbling like loose beads. Jordan shifted closer, not touching him yet, just offering a stable presence. Breathe with me, she murmured, quiet enough that only he could hear. Eli tried, but the attempt looked painful, like lifting weight with bruised muscles. Maya watched and understood in a new way. The world demanded calm from people it refused to treat calmly. The older manager looked at Eli like he was a problem to be managed, and Maya felt her hands curl into fists, then open again, forcing control, because she knew anger would be used as proof that she was unstable. The suit cleared his throat and tried to steer the moment back into corporate language. We can provide a written statement that no wrongdoing occurred, he said, as if that would erase what had been done to their bodies and faces. Jordan didn't flinch. A statement is not enough, she replied. We need the incident report with timestamps, names, and the original complaint documented accurately. The older manager's lips pressed together. That may not be possible, he said, and Maya heard the truth under it. It might be inconvenient. Jordan's eyes stayed steady. Inconvenient isn't the same as impossible, she said, and the crowd murmured again, as if people were remembering they had spines. Maya took a slow breath and pulled her phone from her bag, holding it at chest height like a fragile piece of evidence. I received a custody review notice today, she said, voice steady but thin. If you write this wrong, it follows me. It follows my child. The corridor shifted. People who had been casually curious now looked startled, because custody sounded like a cliff edge. The older manager's gaze sharpened, not with empathy, but with calculation. Now he understood the stakes could spill beyond the mall. The suit's fingers paused over his tablet, as if he realized this story could cost more than a gift card. A woman from the crowd spoke up, hesitant at first, then stronger. I saw what happened, she said, stepping forward with a shopping bag and a tight face. He wasn't bothering anyone. He was just standing there. Another person nodded quickly, emboldened. Yeah, a man added. They came in like it was a threat. The teenager who had been filming lowered the phone completely, cheeks red, suddenly aware of his own role. The crowd began transforming from audience into witnesses, and Maya felt hope rise, dangerous, bright, and fragile. She had learned not to trust hope, but she couldn't stop it from coming. The older manager tried to reclaim control. "We appreciate your feedback," he said, tone stiff, aiming it at the crowd like a lid. Feedback. The same word that had appeared in Maya's custody message, the same word that could be shaped into whatever someone powerful needed. Maya felt the bitter irony. When powerful people gathered feedback, it became policy. When vulnerable people were judged by feedback, it became a weapon. Jordan's voice cut through. "Call it what it is," she said. "Testimony." The word testimony pulled the moment out of gossip and into accountability, and the older manager's jaw tightened because accountability had a cost. The first guard spoke again, quieter, almost ashamed. "We escalated too fast," he admitted. The second guard's shoulders sagged, reluctant agreement without words. The older manager's eyes flashed with irritation, because admissions made liability real. "We acted in accordance with safety protocols," he insisted, trying to glue the narrative back together. Maya's voice stayed calm. "Safety doesn't mean removing whoever makes someone uncomfortable," she said. "Safety means understanding before accusing." Her son watched her mouth as she spoke, as if memorizing how to say hard truths without breaking. Jordan turned to the guards, careful and precise. "Can you confirm you saw the autism card before you asked him to leave?" The first guard nodded. "Yes," he said, and that single syllable created a crack in the corporate wall, because it proved the decision continued after understanding began. The suit stopped typing, eyes flicking up. The older manager glanced toward the manager who had been texting and then away, the kind of glance that silently orders damage control. Maya saw in that glance how systems coordinated without ever calling it coordination, how truth got negotiated behind eyes. The perfume-smooth woman lifted her phone again, desperate to regain power through a lens. "People should see this," she said, aiming it toward Maya's face. Jordan stepped between them, voice sharp. "Stop filming a child," she said. The woman's smile turned brittle. "It's a public place," she argued, and Maya felt her son shrink behind her, his breath catching. Maya's voice dropped low, steady, dangerous in its calm. "Public doesn't mean permission," she said, "and fear doesn't mean fact." The crowd's mood shifted against the woman now, not because everyone suddenly became kind, but because the cruelty had finally become undeniable. The older manager raised his hands as if he were calming children. "Ma'am, please," he said to the perfume-smooth woman, suddenly caring because the filming threatened the mall more than the discrimination did. The woman hesitated, then lowered the phone with a huff. Maya noticed the lesson and hated it. The system acted when it risked itself, not when it harmed people. That realization settled into Maya like a new kind of knowledge, the kind that never fully leaves. She looked at her son and wondered how many times she would have to teach him to recognize that difference, and how many times he would have to watch adults choose comfort over courage. The suit finally spoke in a different tone, less polished, more careful. "We will generate the incident report," he said. "We will provide a written statement acknowledging a misunderstanding related to disability, and that no wrongdoing occurred by the family or by Mr." He paused, glancing at Jordan. "Eli," Jordan supplied. Hearing his name spoken with respect changed Eli's face. His counting slowed, as if the world had briefly matched his humanity. Maya felt a small, aching relief, but she didn't let herself believe it was over. She had seen too many promises dissolve once the crowd went home. Jordan asked for one more thing, voice steady. "I want an apology said out loud," she said, in front of the people who watched. The older manager stiffened, pride fighting survival, but the crowd was watching him now, and he could feel it. He glanced at the suit, then at the guards, then at Maya's son. He swallowed and turned toward Eli. "I'm sorry," he said, the words forced through reluctance. "We misjudged you." He turned to Maya. and I'm sorry we frightened your child. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't enough to fix the past. But it was a public acknowledgement that the story they'd tried to write was wrong. Maya knelt beside her son and touched his cheek, guiding his gaze back to the adults. "Look at me," she whispered, making her voice soft again so he could breathe. Her son stared at Eli, then at Jordan, and his voice came out small, but clear. "He helped," he said. The simplicity sliced through every excuse in the corridor. Eli blinked fast, overwhelmed by being seen as good instead of suspicious, and for a second his hands stopped moving entirely. Jordan's eyes shone, but she held herself together with the same discipline she'd used all day. Maya felt her own tears finally fall, quiet and hot, because the moment wasn't just ending, it was being stored inside them. They left the corridor slowly, not escorted this time, but walking with witnesses behind them and paperwork promised in their hands. The mall sounded the same, music, footsteps, chatter, but Maya heard it differently, like she had survived a storm and could still feel wind in her ears. In the parking lot, cold air hit her face like a clean cloth. Eli stood beside Jordan, shoulders still tense, but his hands had stopped rubbing raw. Maya realized something gentle and terrible. The world would do this again to someone else tomorrow, unless ordinary people kept choosing to intervene, even when it was inconvenient. Maya buckled her son into the car and sat behind the wheel without turning the key. She held the printed statement Jordan insisted on receiving and stared at the words, black ink on white paper, proof that truth could exist in the same format as accusation. The custody meeting still waited, but now she would walk into it with something stronger than fear. Context, witnesses, a documented correction. She looked at her son in the rearview mirror and saw him watching her, learning what courage looked like when it wasn't loud. Across the lane, Jordan hugged Eli tightly, and Eli leaned into it like someone finally allowed to rest. Maya whispered to herself, not a promise of safety, but a vow of dignity. Some stories end with removal, but this one ended with people staying. If this story hit you in that quiet, painful place, the place where a single mom can be judged in seconds, and an autistic man can be treated like a problem just for trying to stay calm, don't let it end here. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Leave a like to help this message reach more people who need it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been misunderstood in public, or witnessed someone being pushed aside because they didn't fit what others expected?